All righty. Welcome, all you folks out in wherever you happen to be. I'm John Merrifield, serious academics with a sense of humor, a new subchapter of Economists Do It with Models. I'm Big Picture Doc, John Merrifield, and I've got Jody Begg's permission to use her Economists Do It with Models name. As soon as she sends me the t-shirt I bought from her, I'll be wearing her cool t-shirt that says Economists Do It with Models. But for now, I've got this t-shirt on. And hey, I think it's appropriate because we're going to talk about the law of supply and demand, and well, it's the law. We'll start out with a topic today that some of you may be sadly familiar with. And that is the market, or the semi-sort of market, for blood. So let's sketch that out here, see what it looks like. Okay, we've got the number of pints of blood per day as on the quantity side. Dollars per pint on the y-axis. And one of the first things that's unique to this graph, that's part of accurately modeling this, is to put the supply line. Now that looks, it's upward sloping. That part of it looks normal. It says more blood will be supplied the higher the price paid to the blood providers, you and me, right, with the needle in the arm. Okay, those are the suppliers of blood. Let's go ahead and label it here and make sure we're clear on that. But you see, we know for a fact that people will donate blood. So at a price of zero, more than zero is available. Under current laws, which I don't completely understand, or maybe they're economic arrangements, that is the way things are done. Blood is donated. It is not sold for the most part. And we have a demand line. It looks normal, right? It says that the quantity demanded is lower. This way, quantity demanded is lower the higher the price that's charged. Now, one of the things that you see here right away is that, yes, if the price is zero, we're going to have a very large shortage of blood. That is, if we charge the hospitals and the places that use blood, if we charge them zero for the blood. Typically, that's not the case. But we know from the incessant talk about blood shortages that the price that is charged, no, not the one that I'm drawing up here, the price that would cause the demand to equal the amount supplied at a price to the providers of blood of zero is P prime, I call it, with an apostrophe. Now, apparently the price that's charged to the blood users, the surgeons, and others must be lower than that. So let's just call it P sub U. Could be anywhere below P prime to get a shortage. It would take this price, which is ever changing and hard to know for sure except by trial and error, to cause there not to be a shortage with blood collected only by donation. Let's call this price to the user. Okay, so at that price, the quantity demanded will be Q sub U, okay, and the amount supplied down here by donation, right, the quantity supplied. Now, there have been some cases where there weren't shortages of blood. I'm sure there are isolated cases all the time, but a well-known case, and that is 9/11, the attack on the Twin Towers in New York, along with the Pentagon in Washington. And as a result, there was a patriotic response which shifted the supply way past the quantity demanded. And the reason for that is because the quantity demanded didn't change very much. People were either killed, a lot of them tragically, or not hurt at all, or at least not in need of a blood transfusion. All right, so what could we do about this situation that we have here with a shortage? Well, of course, we could iteratively, by trial and error, try to keep the price here at P prime. For whatever reason, that's not done. The other alternative is to set the price, or allow the price to set itself at a market equilibrium by letting markets do what they do, namely prices fall when there's not enough, when there are frustrated buyers, or when prices rise when there are not enough, it's not enough blood and frustrated buyers, or prices will fall when there are frustrated sellers and more than enough of the commodity, in this case blood, to satisfy the demand. So if we let the market work it out, we would have an equilibrium most of the time, or be adjusting towards an equilibrium the rest of the time. And that's pretty much the story for blood. Now we can convert this graph to another use, but we'll erase it because it's kind of messy. But the other one that I'm going to draw up here is going to be about organs available for transplant, and the graph looks pretty much the same. Okay, so let's go ahead and sketch that up here. Again, we have the same kind of a thing because the amount available transplantable organs like hearts and livers, kidneys, transplantable organs, there's a federal law that bans selling them. So the amount that we can convince people to donate is the amount supplied at a price of 0. Okay, we put the demand in here, and we know if we've read about organ transplanting at all, we know that there's a long wait list, big shortage. So the amount desired at this price of 0 is way more than the amount supplied. And again, we have the same kind of a situation. We could charge an enormous sum. We're not allowed to do that, although indirectly it does seem to happen via the transplant clinics charging more for the operations. We could charge this price, P prime, so that there wouldn't be a shortage of organs, or we could allow the market to work and the quantity Q sub E would be available at price P sub E, and that would be the purchasers then would be the transplant clinics, right? So let's make sure that that's clear. The suppliers are folks like you and I when we're about to die, or we just did in a car accident or something like that. We've signed an organ donor card. We're the suppliers, or our estate. And then the demanders are the transplant clinics via the people on the lists or that have just been diagnosed with a disease that requires them to get a new organ of one type or another. All right, so let me move over to my assistant over here. I drew a graph up here for practice. Let me just get rid of that. I call this my assistant, Blanca Delgado. I wish I could hear you groaning out there because I'm pretty sure you're not laughing. Serious academics with a sense of humor doesn't guarantee a good sense of humor. Okay, but again, we will do it with models. Okay, so let's see. What does the organ transplant operation market look like? Well, let's see. I'm pretty sure it looks like this. At least on the supply side. Because you can't transplant organs that you don't have. Let me label my graph properly. Oops. Organ transplant operations is what we're talking about here. Okay, you can't transplant more organs than you have. And so this is the amount available for transplant. If we put our demand line on here, we can get a pretty darn high price. It seems to me like the transplant operations are the ones that are going to be cashing in on the high price that results when there's a restriction on the number of organs. If, on the other hand, we allow a market for organs, then the supply line would look like S1 instead of S2, where the difference between the marginal cost, which we expect to be rising steadily with more operations, would increase with the number of operations, where the difference between the supply and the marginal cost of actually doing the operations would be equal to this market price over here. With that, let me double check my outline and make sure that I've covered everything. I'm being a little bit nervous here on my first recordings. Yeah, I think that about covers it. Let me just show what the model says ultimately. It's quite possible that if we loosen up the market for the transplantable organs, making them available in greater quantity with flexible price to the organ transplant operation market, that we could actually get a lower price if organs are for sale. If you actually have to pay the people that provide the organs rather than not pay them, as is the case under the current law, you could actually have cheaper organ transplant operations. That'll do it for this lesson.